Welcome to the Fix Washington podcast. This is Representative Travis Couture, your host today, put on by the Washington State House Republican Caucus. And my guest today is my great seatmate, Representative Dan Griffey of the 35th District. How's it going,
Hello,
Dan?
I'm doing great.
Hey, so fill people in on a bill that we recently tackled together about copper theft in our communities.
Yeah, so unfortunately, there are some rather industrious thieves in our district. As you well know, it leaves people without 911 telecommunications. So no telephone. There's no cell service, as you well know, in that area. Starlink is spotty, so they really have no option. These thieves have stole this copper twice in a row. They'll just take a pike pole, they will pull the wire to the ground, hook it to the hitch of their truck, and then just drive off with it. We have two bills, as you well know, to deal with it. One, we want to go after the buyers, the people that are actually buying the copper. We say first time that you buy the copper, this copper illegally, it's a $10,000 fine. The second time, it'll be $20,000. If you do it a third time, we're just going to suspend your business license. You cannot operate as a recycler in Washington State. The second bill establishes a Class C felony under the RICO statute, so we could maybe try to get our federal partners to help out. We want people to know that in Washington State, our 911 emergency communications lines are not yours for the taking, and we're going to be serious about this thing.
Yeah, and thank God, right? Because it's one of the things we get contacted a lot about, right, from our communities, especially our extra rural communities, I like to call them, like
Yeah.
Tahuya, Dawato, right? I mean,
Denying people of a telephone. My goodness, Ma Bell was how many, long ago?
Well, and oftentimes, right, like by the time the company puts the new cable back in, it's stolen. Like
yeah, exactly.
days.
That happened this way. And the horrible thing is they're fined. The telecoms are fined for every day that they don't have their telephones, and it's really not their fault because everything's switched to fiber. As you well know, it's really hard to get copper telephone line, and so they have to do a special order. It doubles the cost. So I really feel for those members of our district that can't call their grandmothers, but especially they cannot call 911.
Yeah, exactly. Well, speaking of public safety and calling 911, we have another bill, right, about people who are in extreme crisis, civil commitments, and secure detox facilities. And you were just on the radio this morning talking about it.
Well, yeah, in my 30 years of professional firefighting service, everyone in the firefighting community or emergency services community is really disappointed that people can call 911 over and over and over again for somebody that's in mental or substance abuse crisis, and you can see it. You can see those people that really can't make rational decisions. What we wanted to do, you and I, we wanted to civilly commit them, treat them, and then get them back into society. But at this point in time, that's not what's done. They offer them the opportunity to go in, and then they can offer themselves out.
And ultimately, right, it's about saving people's lives.
It is.
And, some people would say, well, wow, isn't this going to cost the state some money? And I would say that the cost to society and the cost to the state is far greater with what we're doing right now than any investment we make into secure detox facilities.
Well, we've had pushback from the ACLU and a lot. They say that people have civil liberties that we'll be violating. At this point in time, I want everyone watching this podcast to understand we do not want to suspend the civil liberties of people who are cognizant to make those decisions. But either the mental illness or the substance that they're taking is making it so they don't have the ability to make a rational decision. So we should make it for them. I think that's what love looks like.
Yeah, exactly. That's what real compassion is like.
Yeah.
Speaking of love and compassion, we both have kids. You have grandkids, and we've seen some hard times for our school system here in Washington, and our community is no different, right? We have a national report card that recently came out that shows we have some of the lowest outcomes in math and reading in 3 decades. And at the same time, we have the highest record spending in our K-12 system ever. And a lot of people are disenrolling their kids from public schools in Washington State. And some of it has to do with kind of cultural problems, especially as it relates to parents' rights.
Yeah.
Right now, parental rights are sadly once again under attack here in Olympia. Probably a lot of people have heard what I've had to say about it, but maybe someone wants to hear what you have to say about it.
Well, I mean, look at Fox News and everybody covered the attempt that you made in committee, and thank you for doing that. But let's just all get on the same page. If my child or my grandchild is sexually assaulted by a staff member in a school, I must be notified immediately. There's no 48-hour waiting period. The parents are in charge. And I think some of the reason we're seeing disenrollment is because parents are finding out that they don't have any say, that this is some amalgamous government entity that they don't belong to. However, they pay taxes there. They elect school board directors to that position. Recently, I had I sat down in one of the school districts that you and I represent together, and we had a conversation about people with male genitalia showering with females. And the community is absolutely up in arms about it. They believe that pride and dignity should be shown and respect to the person who's in transition. However, we shouldn't traumatize every other girl in that locker room. Travis, there are some girls that say they will not use the bathroom at all during the day, at all. They want to hold it and wait until they go home or maybe go outside because they do not want to use the restroom when a male is in that restroom. And I think if you add all of those things up, I think we're telling parents and families that they don't have any say any longer. That is why they're disenrolling.
And it just further erodes the trust in our systems, right, and in public schools. And we saw last night that that same school lost its levy campaign. So that's money to the school that's not there anymore. The community is already strapped financially with the big affordability crisis that we have in our state. So that's a factor at play as well. But when parents and even people who are taxpayers in our community without kids in the school anymore, when they don't trust what's happening in the school system, that affects the schools financially through their levies and bonds as well. One more thing I wanted to talk to you about is something we've been working very hard on for the last, since basically January of 2023 when we became aware of it, and that's the sexually violent predator problem. Obviously, we had places in our district like Tenino where they were trying to drop 11 sexually violent predators into a 3-bedroom rambler into the community, and we stopped it once in Tenino, and we stopped it again before it even really got started in Rochester. And so this is something that really has threatened our communities and really makes people fearful. They don't know who's going to be living next door to them. Some of the most violent sex offenders in our state, some of the worst, horrific crimes against kids and other people. And so we've tried every single session to push multiple common sense reforms to the system, some big, some small. Recently, I mean, you dropped with me as a co-sponsor your big SVP reform bill, and we understand that they have they need a constitutional pathway to be rehabilitated and out of civil commitment. So there's nothing that can be done about that, but we want to make sure that the communities are safe and that the system actually works, and that we're not just freely releasing people who aren't ready to be released into society, into unsuspecting communities with no security and no guardrails. And so one of the questions I guess I want to ask, and I would kind of like people to know from our perspective, is the frustration as far as the majority party and others not listening to the needs of our communities when we bring them up. What has been, I guess, that would be one of my frustrations, but what would be one of your frustrations along this process?
Well, I mean, so The legislative process was designed to be a slow and arduous process. This is way more slow and way more arduous than I ever thought it would be. So two things. I want to reiterate what you said. For those people out there like, why are you trying to release sexually violent predators in community? I'm not trying to do that. This policy, if we're going to have the Special Commitment Center, which once you've completed your term of incarceration, if your psychological profile profiles you as a risk to society, we civilly commit you on McNeil Island as a sex offender, as you well know. But I want the rest of the people to know this. We're not working on this policy set to release sexually violent predators in community. We want, if it has to happen because of their constitutional rights, we want them to be, we want the community to be feel safe and secure with how we do it. The disappointing thing that we found out when we looked at it is the less restrictive alternative releases is a hodgepodge of a whole bunch of bills. So we tried to put a bunch of reforms together to make a very, A to Z sort of process to get out. We found out that the courts just assign providers, and when the courts just assign providers, they could charge the taxpayers of Washington State up to $26,000, one time $31,000 per person per month. That's $31,000 a month.
That's
the
incredible.
biggest thing that you and I really took offense to, the really frustrating thing is the majority party, the person that we were negotiating with, the majority party, just shrugged his shoulders. Well, I don't care how much money we spend.
Yeah, that's true. That was incredible.
It's just
Which
just
also
baffling.
goes to our budget crisis.
Yes,
It's
absolutely.
It's an overall thought process for our budget crisis. They don't care how much money, and I think the words that the gentleman used were, I'm a tax and spend liberal. I don't care how much money it costs.
The good gentleman did say that, and that was disappointing. So what we wanted to do was control the costs, because we know that those that operate the Special Commitment Center on McNeil Island, the director there says we can do it for a heck of a lot less money. So the bill, one, transfers who owns the LRA housing. We also try to really put some restrictions on where that LRA housing can be placed. As you well know, there's so many components to the bills that we broke them out and divvied it up. This was a bipartisan effort. The good Representative Mari Levitt has been helping us through this whole thing. But we tried to get one comprehensive bill that addressed all of those things, these excess costs, the safety and security planning, that you have to actually reach out to the community and tell the community that there's going to be a LRA housing component, right? All of those things were rejected, and we didn't hear the bill. Now, there is one thing that we got out. We got your bill, which that would be great if you could talk about your bill, which is amazing, which is the stacking, right, of earn time. We also got a new monitoring system out, one an ankle monitor that is almost tamper-proof and is real-time looked at. It allows the restrictions that sexually violent predator, what boundary restrictions, you can draw a line, and you can actually infract them based on their GPS positioning on their ankle monitor. We believe this is a step in the right direction for safety and security of communities.
Yeah, and we would have loved, obviously, to have a big sweeping reform, but like you said, it's a slow grind, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes you take what you can get step by step until you inevitably end up at the place you want to be, hopefully someday. And so, yeah, we have the ankle monitor bill. That's helpful.
Yeah.
It's not everything we always wanted, and we have a end of supervision compliance credits for sexually violent predators and less restrictive alternatives. Not everything we ever wanted, but that's something. It's a step in the right direction. And so, yeah, I hope we can get those across the board, and especially, and you know this better than anyone, as one of like the key legislators here who's focused on domestic violence issues and sexual crimes here in Olympia over your last 10 years. And even some personal experience in your family about stuff like that. But I mean, we have, we mentioned the thing about schools, the 48-hour notice, and we wanted immediate notice.
Yeah.
If a teacher sexually assaults your daughter in school.
Yes, absolutely.
But also, there's other concerning bills, especially some coming out of your committee, about reducing sentences for these people who commit heinous sexual crimes, and even a bill in the other chamber in the Senate about net nanny stings and reducing penalties for people who try to lure children in online for sexual activities. People might know it better as like To Catch a Predator on Dateline with Chris Hansen.
Yeah.
You probably watched that on TV before, but they want to reduce penalties for people that do that. And I mean, how does that, I mean, I know it really, frankly, angers me quite something fiercer than the word anger that I'm not willing to use in this podcast. But I mean, how does, as someone with so much experience in this area, how does that make you feel?
Well, it's infuriating. It's absolutely infuriating. As we know, the screw that's loose in the brain is the similar screw that is loose in mass murderers, say Green River Killer. They just manifest their horrible behavior in a different manner. These are crimes that have to be taken seriously, especially the net nanny stings. These people were actually attempting to have sexual activity with underage people.
Yeah.
It is absolutely
Gross.
the worst. Yeah, it's the worst sort of crime. They're monsters, and monsters like that must have the book thrown at them. Reducing penalties is the wrong way to go. But on that committee, absolutely devastated most of the time. But I hold my own, and I tell our constituents narrative. I tell them what they're feeling. They want to feel safe and secure in their community. When we do polls, our constituents are telling us, 1 and 2, and they're very close, within a quarter percentage points, that they feel like they can't afford to live in our district any longer, and they do not feel safe and secure to let their kids play in their front yard as much as they used to. And I want them to feel safe and secure to let their kids play in their front yard. And I especially do not want sexually violent predators right around the corner without safety and security built in and monitoring built in.
Well, of course, we've been fighting hard to remove kids, innocent kids, babies and toddlers, from homes where there's fentanyl, being abused by their parents, and we see skyrocketing deaths. It's something I've been fighting, extremely hard about, and unfortunately, we're not seeing the progress that we need to see here. And what just kills me, Dan, is that every session is an opportunity
To save another kid.
to save another kid, but once we gavel out and sine die and end the session in April, end of April, and we haven't fixed it, then there's nothing that we can do to change the law to save those kids for another, until the next January comes.
Well, I argue the agency could certainly do something, but the agency is unwilling to do anything, and that is very disappointing. I will tell you, as a professional firefighter, you deal with heart stopping all the time, and my job was always to restart them. But the worst thing, the thing that keeps you awake at night, that makes you hold your loved ones even closer, is when a child's heart stops. And these kiddos that you're talking about are under the supervision of the agency. The agency has made a conscious decision to place the children back in the custody of a parent who is openly using lethal amounts of narcotics. Every time that parent takes that dose, the dose that if the kid accidentally gets it, an accidental ingestion will kill the child.
Yeah.
And when the parent is addicted to such a substance, the only thing in their mind that they pay attention to is the next high.
Yeah.
They don't have the ability to adequately parent. Your bill would remove children, get the parents' treatment, and then reunify them. It is not, the people outside of this place says that it's just taking away kids from parents. No, it's taking them away, getting the parents better, and then giving them back, so we don't have
exactly.
another statistic.
Like you said with the civil commitment stuff, it's about taking away the keys temporarily,
Yes.
getting people, saving lives, getting them the help they need. And yeah, I think personally what I feel about this topic is like I won't be done here until that's done.
Absolutely.
And like I will raise the earth,
Yes.
until it's finished. But the last thing I wanted to talk about, obviously we hit upon it just briefly about the affordability crisis and the costs in our rural communities. I mean, Washington has some of the highest prices of gas, groceries, housing, and rent.
Yeah.
We have a lot of seniors on fixed incomes
Yep.
in our district who moved to our rural district to have a nice, quiet, lovely retirement. Some of them now also under threat because maybe they own rental properties under threat by things like rent control.
Yep.
However, one of the things we just heard yesterday in the House was a bill that would effectively could triple property taxes in our state. And, you know, it's important to note that, you know, over 90% of the people that weighed in Olympia were opposed.
Yeah, almost 12,000, a little over 12,000.
Yeah, almost 12, 13,000 people.
We very rarely get 12,000 people to comment on anything here.
And
have
only
one on a bill.
about 100 pro, and it was probably the Democrats over there.
They probably rounded their own up, yes.
And so, I mean, just maybe talk about like the cost pressure in our communities and why it's so important that we come out of this session with a budget that is responsible, that doesn't increase reckless spending, that does what it's supposed to do, but most importantly, doesn't raise taxes on our communities.
Well, I mean, it's so important. You know, the poll that we did, you know, over 70, almost 70% of the district saying that they found that the things that they like to do, the things they like to eat, are getting priced out of their reach, right? Washington is just getting in the way of that. I mean, Washington is lax on crime. Right now, property crime is off the charts. Almost $4 billion of products walk off the shelves. That makes everything in Washington state cost more than it would cost in another state.
You've been trying to fix the retail theft too.
I've been trying really hard to fix it, but again, getting them to agree that there's a problem. So they'll send people from the Defenders Association into a committee hearing that's happened yesterday that said, well, the retailers are lying. There's not that much theft in Washington state. There is absolutely that much theft in Washington state. Things are not getting better, but what has happened is because Washington state's turned such a blind eye to crime, people stopped calling 911. But when you poll them individually, you talk to the cashier, she's like, yeah, there's probably 8 or 9 people that just routinely walk into the store, fill their pockets full of stuff, and just walk out. We stopped reporting it because the cops won't show up anymore. When you transfer everything to a stop loss, which is insurance, it also then raises all of our insurance. And have you opened your insurance premium any longer?
Oh, it's going up.
It's skyrocketing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it is policies that this place passes and laws that are causing all of our insurance premiums to go through the roof. Affordability is number one on our constituents' mind, but it should be number one on the people that run this place's mind.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, I think it's funny because people at home should probably know that we carpool to work a lot.
Yep.
And conversations like this happen on the way to work, and
Yep.
maybe some more angrier conversations on the way back from work where we're frustrated.
Different, colorful language.
Where
I would
we're
think.
frustrated with something that has happened. But well, hey, obviously, thanks for joining us on the Fix Washington podcast, and maybe someone else will be hosting it next time around. But thanks for tuning in, and I hope you tune in next time.
Fix Washington with Hannah Scott, a podcast from Washington House Republicans. Go to our website, houserepublicans.wa.gov. Find us on Facebook, X, Instagram, and YouTube.